the audience know a little bit more about your role, and also maybe just, walk us through kind of Bud Light's overall strategy in gaming and esports kind of at a high level, and then we can kind of, dig in a little bit more from there.
Sure. So I lead sports marketing for Bud Light. So it oversees our NFL, team and league player partnerships, NHL, college, soccer, and then esports, right? So within esports, there's a ton that we've been doing, especially last year. We really leaned in as traditional sports went on pause or just didn't have fans. So really, when we look at esports, there's several different ways that we activate in. We have partnerships with big leagues like 2K, League of Legends. We've got team partnerships within it, Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, some 2K teams, and then influencer partnerships, right? So Tim the Tatman would be the big one for us there. Some of our other pillars would then be content. So we've got the Bud Light Twitch channel, and in 2020 it was the #1 brand Twitch channel on the platform. And then we look at things like earned media and activation, which would be really like cultural moments that we really step up and do big things like the BL6 or Battle of the Best last year.
That's great. And maybe we'll talk about some of those, some examples from those types of areas of where you focus and partnerships. But I guess just to kind of touch on it, because we, would love to know how, you gained any sort of lessons from last year. Last year obviously was really unique and for everyone. And, was there anything that you kind of learned about gamers as consumers throughout the pandemic? Kind of, things that you maybe did that you might not have thought about, or maybe you doubled down. I know you mentioned a few things. If you could just talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it was more for us is that we were really prepared with the strategy that could be in a COVID world or a non-COVID world. So really for us, it was just doubling down on what was working and really fine tuning. I think last year more so than ever, without live events, we focused a lot on own content. So we really started off COVID immediately, when sports went on pause, we figured out how to work with 16 professional athletes across all the pro leagues to compete in a charity Call of Duty Warzone tournament. 3 million person stream, very effective. Really like took the insights on that, how can we get bigger? And that really resulted in Battle of the Best, which we declared the Super Bowl of esports, where we had 16 pro gamers competing across 3 different nights, playing 4 different titles to declare who's the best gamer. And that was the #1 brand stream ever on Twitch. Biggest Halo event ever, biggest Fall Guys event ever. So not only, compared to other brands, even some games that the publishers have put out that we as a brand were out streaming. So it's really impressive. There's a lot of audiences, I think, that were looking for that fun content, because you got to see, Shroud, who isn't going to traditionally play something like Fall Guys, come into that world, but you also got to see him, do what he does in Call of Duty. It's really about like finding ways to add value back to the fans, and even the hybrid event where we mixed in music. I think trying to find the insights that gamers truly care about. It's such a large and robust population. Finding a way for our brand to really shine through and add value back to the fans is what we've leaned on and are continuing to do.
Yeah, I remember in our discussion last week, and just to kind of touch on that point, you described Bud Light as sort of looking at the sort of casual gamer, or sort of the broad spectrum of the gamer. Is that kind of, where you guys are focused?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we're not going to make your internet faster or give you an advantage with your keyboard. For us, it's about trying to find the moments that make sense for our brand. So although we partner with the biggest esport organization in the world, League of Legends, a lot of what we do with that partnership is finding like ownable moments. So, celebrating a Bud Light Ace, which is an in-game moment. That to us is like, if you're a fan watching, that's a raise a beer and cheers. But we also have the official post-game show, which is, takes place in a bar setting. We also, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, right? We partner with Tim the Tatman, who's a great brand ambassador, but he's not really competing in esports tournaments, more of a casual gamer. And the reason he's so famous is because he's a content curator, he's an entertainer, and people really love to go and watch him. So I think for Bud Light, it's all about finding what the right way to reach these communities within gaming is, because gaming fans, it's over 100 million legal drinking age consumers, how are we going to speak to all of them? And it can't just be a, one size fits all approach. You have to try and speak to the different communities. The same way we look at sports, right? An NFL fan isn't necessarily NHL or NBA. You've got to try and find ways to speak relevantly to that fan base.
Yeah, and that's great that you brought up sports, because I know what resonated last week when I spoke with you was, kind of how you're approaching gaming, maybe with some of those learnings, because obviously, you handle sports marketing as well for Bud Light. Are there strategies that work in gaming that may not apply to your traditional sports marketing efforts or strategies?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot less rules. I think like as it's been defined, what we've really enjoyed as a brand is that we can kind of shape the narrative and shape the policies and the norms that really exist. These other leagues have been around for decades and maybe over a century for some of them, and there's just a lot of established ways that brands traditionally act, where Bud Light has ownable in-game moments where it is called something, right? A Bud Light something in a game is crazy. There's the ability that we're looking at of actually being integrated into games, creating our own characters. There's a lot of things that they've just never been done, and like, why not, right? Because we don't have to play with that same mentality. I'd say the other way is that so much of what we do from a sponsorship and overall sports marketing standpoint for years, and we've gotten better at it, we're still not near there with traditional sports as we are with esports, is that you're advertising your logo, you are associated with the marks. Within esports and gaming, we've really taken the eyes of like, we want to be content creators. Like, we don't want to be ad interrupters. We want to be bringing things that are relevant to gamers. And the Bud Light Twitch channel is really, it's like, when I explained it internally, it's like we own a like a TV channel, right? And every night there's different content. There's different genres of content. Sometimes it's people playing games. Sometimes it's post-game shows and happy hours. It's really just endless options when you can curate all this content. And every one of our partners is putting content on the Bud Light Twitch channel. So it's just using their reach to reach their fan bases in an ecosystem that we fully own and can program.
That's great. And I definitely want to hear a little bit more about that. But I guess one thing that we're interested in knowing is, how do you keep the momentum of esports and gaming going now that lockdown restrictions are lifting and people will be outside instead of, in the home this summer and fall?
Yeah, I think, it's a mix of what we were doing before and trying to adapt, the learnings that we applied in COVID, owning content, being very relevant. I referenced BL6 earlier when we created our own gaming console. I mean, a massive media coverage. It aired on 200 TV stations because Bud Light created a gaming console at the same time. And I know we were talking about that previous chat, hearing about the difficulty still getting like those consoles. We entered the same time that PlayStation, Xbox released a console. Ours could keep your beer cold. You could take it wherever you wanted, and it could project games onto a blank wall. We don't have any reason to make video game consoles, but it was a culturally relevant moment. Everyone was talking about consoles, so why not enter the console wars? Really, I think as we come back to an in-person live event, it's like, what are these cultural moments that are going to happen? Whether it's the League of Legends Championship in front of fans, or it's National Video Game Day, or whatever, E3, if that comes back, TwitchCon. You want to find a way to be relevant, to show up to these events and offer something that I think you want to cross the bridge of just a gaming specific initiative. Now for us and Bud Light, it's such a big brand. We've done so much in gaming. How can we even make mainstream initiatives by doing really cool things? Before COVID, we were partners with Overwatch at the time. And within the game, you have to push what is called a payload, and it looks like a big truck. So we wrapped a Bud Light beer truck, like a semi, the full trailer. And we, at the grand finals, we said, every fan that comes in here, like, you need to push the payload. If we don't have enough people show up, it won't move. But if you can push it to our activation zone, free beer for everybody. So it's like, how can we take these moments that we know are going to happen, they're going to be on the calendar, and find relevant ways to connect with these gamers about their passion point, and then really put our product front and center. So that's exactly what we're going to keep doing. And it's really a mix. Now, I think what we learned is, like, we could have live streamed that whole payload event, right? It costs us really nothing more to have someone out there with a camera. You don't need perfectly produced content for fans to really get a hold of it and enjoy it. So now it's really, as we do these things, what is the live stream component to what we're already going to be doing at the live in person?
That's awesome. And, you know, what I love also is that you guys have been, you know, really focused in this area for the last, you know, several years. And as a result, you know, at least from everything I read and you mentioned is you have the largest, you know, market share in terms of a beer brand. And so, you know, you are essentially the official beer of esports, right? From funding teams and to players, channels, and competitions. And jumping into kind of more of the partnerships area, you know, I was wondering if you could just describe how your partnerships have evolved and maybe even just start with how you're working with platforms like Twitch, right? And how do you utilize the platform to build brand equity and connect with gamers?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we did trademark official beer and official self beer esports and gaming. So just a couple other tactics, right, that are fun and allow us to communicate since we are such investors. But I think we look at it in several ways, and a lot of what we do is it's to grow equity and awareness within this gaming population. So it's the 21 to 27-year-old that we're really trying to reach here. And what we've seen from like a performance standpoint is that really that own content that I discussed, you know, the Bud Light Beer League, our League of Legends partnership in general, these things are really showing growth in not only like our awareness, but also in purchase intent, which is great, right? The strategy is working. On the flip side, what we've learned about gamers is that they really like when you bring value to them, those two things I just discussed, right? Content on the Twitch channel, they love that. But when we're just serving them traditional ads, and you know, last year I think at some point we were running our core spots were about the NFL or beer vendors and stuff, and it didn't really connect. So we took the learnings from last year, you know, if our sponsorship, our content is performing so well, how do we make the media work harder? And that's where we're exploring right now, some custom, you know, digital spots that we could run on Twitch that are bespoke to gamers, right? And so that connection can still be there. All the data shows us that gaming fans don't mind being marketed to. They like the brands are coming in. They're bringing authenticity to their favorite sport and passion point. But if we're not showing up in a way that's relevant, then it's going to miss. And that's what we're really trying to do now through a lot of testing and learning to really see what's going to work and then run that media inventory moving forward. And I think that's how we evolve. That's how we make these things work harder for us. And you know, we haven't aired it yet, but hopefully in a future one of these live casts, we can even share the spot and really tell you the whole path that came to bringing it to life.
That's interesting. So that's kind of an example of kind of how these partnerships are helping you sort of innovate your media opportunities or sort of your approach there. And would the idea be to kind of test that out and see how it performed and then maybe broaden the scope of that sort of tactic? Or,
yeah, I think so. We're, you know, it's not like a super protected trade secret. We're going to start with a League of Legends spot because that is our biggest partnership. It is the biggest esport in the US, I mean, by far. So if we can figure out how we use our inventory within League of Legends, we sponsor 4 League of Legends teams, right? We're so plugged into that ecosystem as is. We want to test that. And if we can make it work with that fan, then you can expand to, okay, well, let's make a gaming, you know, just a generic gaming spot. It doesn't have to be a League of Legends spot. It can be, you know, include Tim the Tatman or include nobody that's famous. There's a lot of ways that you can approach it. There's a lot of insights that, you know, Bud Light is a fun brand, right? And humor, we're the jester personality. Like there's insights like, you know, everyone's got the friend that's going to complain and have an excuse when they lose, right? How can Bud Light make that into something that's more fun and funny and connects our product, right? I think that's really where we get to a brand that's been in this space for a while. We have to continue to lead. And for us to continue to take, especially within our category, we have such a dominant lead over our competitors. We need to be just at the forefront of everything that's happening within the space and making sure that as this consumer continues to age and the population continues to grow, that we're continuing to reach them in new and very relevant ways.
Yeah, that's great. One of the areas I really find exciting that you've been dedicated to is like the content and programming, right? I know that some of the programs you're doing with like Team Liquid that I watch and some of the others, you know, if you could just talk about a little bit more about what are the types of content that sort of you found resonates with gamers and sort of your strategy, because I know you program, for example, sort of different days on Twitch, right? Or whatever it might be, you know, if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think last week we were live 6 out of 7 nights of the week, and that's really our goal. Is to, the long-term ambition is to have content on our channel every single night of the week. And how we get there, it's really a mix of content, but within every partnership that we have, we do have content creation that lives on the Bud Light channel, and we have very strict compensation tied to the viewership. And so, how do we make these partnerships? We're not looking at it from we want just venue signage. That's an old school way of thinking. We want ways that we're going to connect to your fan base. So what Team Liquid puts out on our channel is going to be different than what an NBA 2K team or what the Immortals are going to put out. There's very different ways in, and it's not always just very highly produced custom content. Our League of Legends content is really great, and it's the official post game show, and the league produces it. But you feel like you're watching Fox NFL on Sunday, right? Because it just has that vibe. Where the Immortals, we have now for our second year in the row a partnership with Sheila, and she streams whatever game she's playing, and that could be very relevant games. And she's got her fan base coming on, the Immortals fan base coming on. So it's really this cycle of we want to connect with your fan bases, and how we're going to do that is having you tell us what content is going to connect. And we'll try and fail and keep evolving. I think we come in with a learning mindset because it's still new to us, but we want the experts to tell us what to do. We don't necessarily want to dictate exactly what needs. I want to tell you how I want my branding to show up, how I want my product to be included. But beyond that, like, you tell me what's going to work best with your fan base.
And how do influencers sort of play into that? It sounds like they're sort of a core part of kind of how you get the message out and activate.
Yeah, definitely. Within the team, you start to establish relationships with some of the players, but also there are, in addition to relationships that we have through our team partnerships or league partnerships, we do have a partnership with Tim the Tatman. And I think a good example of how big these influencers are, because oftentimes you just can't understand the Tim the Tatman can do more more impact for you than potentially Tom Brady in a given day, right? So this past week, we launched the Bud Light Seltzer Retro Summer Series, which is a new summer pack, old school flavors like you'd get out of an ice cream truck or something. And we decided the best way that we wanted to try to launch that is the first person to drink it is going to be Tim the Tatman. So we're going to send him some product, and we're going to create a challenge where each flavor is going to represent a different loadout in Call of Duty. So he played with Summer Ice, and he's got a riot shield and a pistol, right? And his fans love it because he's getting beat. And so we kind of created these funny, and like we said, Bud Light is about fun. We're not going to try and be super serious. We want this to be entertaining. We tried to create some fun packs with him so that each time he played, he was at a little bit of a disadvantage, right? And that's the fun of this. And each time he died, right? Why do his fans want to see it? I mean, they love to watch his freakouts, but for every death that he had, we were going to give away 3 co-branded. We did a limited edition merch drop, and we had the hashtag tie-dye if Tim dies. So within 30 minutes of Tim going live on his stream, tie-dye if Tim dies was now trending #1 on Twitter just instantly. And we trended the entire stream that he had. So it's like the power of Tim just saying, and just to unpack this a little bit, he's on Twitch. You can't put hashtags on Twitch. He is telling his fans in chat during stream, every time I die, you can win this hoodie I'm wearing. You have to tweet about it and follow the Bud Light Gaming Twitter handle. And to get to #1 on Twitter, that's very, very difficult to do. But for him to be able to do it so rapidly and take people out of the Twitch platform onto Twitter to then trend #1 is just, I mean, it's pretty crazy, and shows the power of these influencers. And then we also saw 50% growth on our gaming handle in that day because, just to get a hoodie. So I think really the power of influencers, it's going to continue to grow. There's probably 5 that have the scale of Tim. And I think, within the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be 10 or 20 that are putting up those same numbers. So it's really about aligning with partners that have, shared values. Tim's very fun. He loves the product. We wouldn't sign someone just because they're the best gamer. We want someone that's going to feel authentic to our brand.
That's great. And you mentioned Twitter, and I know you spoke about that when we talked last week. And Twitter has obviously been really heavily invested in gaming and esports over the last few years. And I know that's become sort of reconnected and reemerged as sort of an important partnership there. Can you just briefly talk about kind of how you're developing the partnership with that platform and what it means?
Yeah, so what we found is that our Bud Light Twitter handle, it's just there's so much content we put out, and we have so many relationships across not only sports but also music, entertainment. There's brand comms that we want to do, memes that the team wants to post, and to keep up with the amount of gaming initiatives that we have, it was just muddying the waters with the overall strategy. So we did bring back the Bud Light gaming handle. I think this year we, starting at like a zero base, are now at like 25,000 followers. And really, I mean, it's putting out, following the lead from the influencers, right? Like, we're going live. This is what you can do. We're doing giveaways, all related to gaming and gamers. And, you can comment on Tim's post or other influencers in the space. So how do you find ways? I think we actually, if Xbox was on earlier, I think we were kind of trolling them the other day. But it's really about finding ways to be relevant to that Bud Light tone and personality, because that ultimately, if consumers are following us, they're enjoying the content we're putting out, they're going to have that favorable opinion on our brand, and ultimately that will lead to purchase intent.
Great. And I guess, when it comes to measurement, the audience, I imagine, is kind of interested in, how you approach that more from like a macro level for this discussion. But, what insights have you learned through measuring the impact of your marketing efforts that has helped sort of inform future strategy? If you could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I could, if I had one, it's that gaming fans don't mind being marketed to. It's about relevance and understanding them and what their interests are. And so that's why, going back to that custom TVC, that's all based on a brand study. And that's the same way that you'd run a brand study on a new TV spot or on a sponsorship. You're really looking to see what works and what doesn't. And it's through the roof when we look at like our consideration, our favorability for something like a Battle of the Best or Charity Royale, these owned initiatives that we have. Because really, I could serve a 30-second ad, and it'd take me a while. I'd have to use the same ad to so many different people, but I had 9.5 million people that willingly came to watch Battle of the Best, right? And they stayed there. There's hundreds of thousands of concurrent viewers, which is massive. We had more people watching Battle of the Best during the night than the NBA playoffs, right? Concurrent viewers. So they willingly came to my spot, came to my channel. My logo is never off the screen. Product messages included throughout, but there was not a single ad. So it's like things like that, they're expensive. You can't do it every day, but that's how we're seeing the best connection to the gamers. And obviously you can't just say, I'm going to have a new gaming strategy and I'm going to do big things like Bud Light did. It's taken a while for us to get to that point. But this cycle we have of creating content, owning our ecosystem with a Twitch channel, having our Twitter, it all connects and makes our partnerships work a lot harder. And that's what's really showing the growth in terms of consideration amongst consumers.
Yeah, I know. And maybe staying with that theme, I got a couple good questions here. I'll just start to integrate from the audience. What trends in consumer behavior are of particular importance to you? And, what can sort of the marketers and brand marketers on this discussion sort of learn from you?
Yeah, so I think the trends that we see with gamers is that it still continues to grow. I wouldn't say that since COVID's over, it's going to slow down much. I think it just accelerated 5 years ahead of its time. So I think the trend that we really want to watch, and I think it may be more particular to a brand like Bud Light, but is once they come out of this Twitch ecosystem of just passively viewing or being in chat, like how are we going to be the brand that they're excited to see at an event? Because there is a very big community, and it's almost a virtual community, but it is certainly as a community. But these 100,000 plus people festivals, the Twitch cons of the world, how can we show up and be very relevant to them? Because we know just as everyone else wants to get back to normalcy and go out and have fun, we want to welcome everyone back to these esports events with a beer in their hand and some fun experiences.
Yeah, and how do you identify your KPIs for a product that is geared sort of 21 plus consumers? That was another question.
Yeah, so I mean, everything that we do, we focus very hard on making sure we're reaching the right consumer. So that Bud Light Twitch channel, that was the first age-gated channel ever on the platform, right? And really making sure that everything we're doing is in a responsible way. So I don't think the KPIs shift much. I mean, we're still trying to recruit consumers, right? 21 to 27 is our recruit strategy. we look at these metrics the same way that we'd look at a traditional campaign with, this is marketing, right? It's not necessarily an ROI. It's, is your consideration increasing, is purchase intent, penetration. As long as we're seeing those metrics and we're able to analyze those for the different programs, for the different media that we're running, I think it's probably consistent with other brands. It's not necessarily the 21 plus. That's just part of everything we do as a base.
Do you see the audience demographic expanding to be more inclusive as the industry grows and evolves?
So maybe unpack that one for me.
I don't know, it was an audience question, but I think they're just trying to understand, maybe as the, how have you seen sort of the consumer journey evolve in recent years, right? And are these gamers on different platforms, than just Twitch? And do you see that changing in the future? And is there like a broader audience, 21 plus, that you're going to be going after, or is it going to kind of stay the same, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the population of 21 plus consumers will continue to grow in a big way. I think what we learned from our League of Legends partnership, and a lot of data and research went in before we signed that, is that like their consumer is now in their mid to late 20s. Like their average consumer is now like 26, which is, it's very old for this space, as crazy as that sounds. And I think, even if we talk to some people in our legal team, they all had a PlayStation 2 or a PlayStation, and it's just so normal now that I think it'll continue to be a massive audience above 21, and it already is the majority, but it's just going to be like, how can we continue to be relevant to all ages? Because it won't just be a 21 to 27-year-old consumer that we're reaching, right? 35-year-olds are going to one day be probably a bigger proportion of the consumer audience that is a gaming fan.
Let's maybe just, talk about a little bit about the future. We're all excited about the future and sort of seeing where this all goes. Given the blockbuster year last year, for gaming at least, and esports, what does 2021 hold? And also just into the future, kind of, how do you see esports sustaining this growth into the future? And what's kind of your outlook?
I think innovation will ultimately determine who's going to grow, who's going to have the most powerful leagues and partnerships moving forward. Some of these things that you look at from like a viewability standpoint, I think can get better. Like who's going to be the first one to crack the yellow line of esports, right? Or, PGA, watching golf before they had that arc shown where the ball's going was a lot more difficult. And I think eventually these publishers will figure it out. I think the broadcast growth and the massive probably media rights deals that they're signing will lead them to figure out what competitive advantages they can have against other leagues. And then I think from a brand standpoint, right, what we're looking for as marketers is how can we be integrated into the experience instead of just running a banner ad, right? Like, do I show up? And I know that League of Legends is already doing this, like banner ad, like Rift banners, where you're actually showing up within the game. So I think innovation will just continue to keep these guys at the forefront. They're far above, I think, from a, technological standpoint, far above where the other leagues are, and that's their competitive advantage. They just need to continue to lean into that and reinvent the ways that consumers are viewing and interacting with their content.
And you mentioned how you kind of do the loadouts and those types of activations. So you would probably be looking at that space of how do I get deeper integration into the actual game and be part of the competition and closer to the fan in that way. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Or
yeah, I mean, we have conversation with publishers all the time, and I think one of the biggest challenges that both our legal teams recognize is a 21 plus consumer. And you want to make sure that what you do is kind of gated so that you're not reaching younger fans. But we really, how do you get integrated in game is really a big piece of what, is next. And I'm sure a bunch of brands are looking to do that. I mean, Wendy's did an incredible stunt with Fortnite where they just went and they started destroying all the fridges, right? Like that just took on a cultural, moment and they removed the fridges, right? Like how do other brands play in that space and make sure that they're finding ways to integrate within the game versus just like serving ads during, a different segment within Twitch?
Do you see trends in the gaming space where, it informs sort of your media strategy in the future? I know you talked about like creating specific bespoke content for this audience. Do you see, connected TV or sort of any of these new areas, being part of your sort of strategy in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, getting the expertise that our company and our media team has gotten through not only like Twitch and gaming, but through music live streaming this past year, there's a lot of things that made us rethink what we're doing. We actually launched like our own podcast, which is very unique. And that was a corporate initiative. It wasn't a single brand. Working with, influencers, meme creators, there's so many different ways that we've kind of, flipped the traditional media model on its head. So all of that stuff that you listed, yes, that's absolutely a part of what we're planning. We're trying to make sure that we're doing it the right way moving forward.
That's awesome. And, where do you see the future of gaming esports for Bud Light? Let's say, I know people talk about the metaverse and all that kind of stuff, and it's sort of a buzzword now, but, what sort of gets you most excited about the future?
I mean, if you look at what Red Bull did with, owning these, peripheral sports that people are paying to go to them, other brands are paying to sponsor them, like that would be that 10-year objective. I think if we really look far out and from what we've established and the expertise that we've gained in the space, there's talks that we're in right now about having other partners come into some of our content. Really, if we're going to put this investment in and we're able to get such highly produced content that consumers want, there's other non-competitive brands that can come along to be a part of this. Obviously, we can make sure that we own it on our ecosystem, but there's more room in the sandbox for others to play. That's
interesting. Are there any sort of big brand activations that we should kind of keep an eye out for later this year?
We will definitely be present at the League of Legends finals this year. And there's a couple other big things that we have planned, but not far enough in development that ready to share yet.
Gotcha. No worries. I'm going to open it up to maybe the Q&A if there's any additional questions. This has been an amazing conversation, and just huge fan of what you all been doing. And one of the things, well, we maybe see if there's any other questions here is what you're doing with the teams themselves. Have you seen like a difference in how, let's say, League of Legends performs versus 2K League, or any sort of the particular partnerships there, and if there's been a difference in sort of whether you're seeing performance or sort of results that might be different?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sure. So some of the partnerships you have, like with like League of Legends versus like a 2K games, have you learned any sort of insights from those like sort of distinct, like actual like franchises, right? And sort of the different types of audiences that are part of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all important for us as part of like a portfolio approach, because we want to reach the different communities. Oftentimes a 2K fan isn't a fan of League of Legends and vice versa. So if we're really going to try and, get the biggest mass scale that we can, right? We're a big brand. We want to reach as many consumers as possible. You have to have different pillars to your strategy. You can't just have one fighting game and expect to reach all communities within gaming. That's why we've got the league team influencer partnerships, because we can really cross over and reach a lot of the different communities within the gaming space.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's always been, I think, a challenge for brands is that, in sports, which better than anyone, it's a little bit different, but in gaming, there's very specific audiences for each sort of big major, franchise, and each audience sort of needs to be, addressed in different ways. And it sounds like that's something that's really important to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, I think the questions, if there's any other audience questions, put them
Feeling
through.
good about the Lightning tonight. They're
a
partner of ours.
That was in chat here. Let's do that. So, yeah, how do you feel about the Lightning's chances for Game 2 tonight?
I'm rooting for them. I sponsor the Lightning and I don't sponsor the Islanders. So, hopefully the Lightning can do it again.
There's one last question, and I don't know if you want to address it. It's how do you address LDA compliance in live content?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about that, but you know, the age gate on our Twitch channel is
That's
definitely
really
a big thing that is able to gate all that out.
yeah. So on Twitter, you're not doing any live content or anything like that, not yet.
We're not doing live content, but you have to be 21 plus to follow the channel.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. This has been great.
Awesome,
I really
guys.
appreciate it, Joe. Yeah.
You know, Joe, I know you were saying you guys sponsor the Lightning and you want them to win, but you know, I don't know when your team wins or when do people drink more, when your team wins or when your team loses? I feel like there's something to think about there. I don't know.
So we have right now a shameless plug in case you're a hockey fan. The longer your beards get, the cheaper the beer gets. So we're leaning into playoff beards. So every round, if your team survives, you get $2 more off your beer. The winning team, even if the Islanders win, we don't sponsor them. The winning city will get free beer regardless. So a free 12-pack of Bud Light.
I love it. I love it.
Great.
I gotta start on that. I mean, I love the superstitions attached to it. No, this was great, guys. Thank you so much. I mean, again, Joe, we always, welcome having you here and love your insights. Nick, amazing job leading this discussion. So thank you both. This was great. And again, this is such a hot area for our community. And you guys on the AB InBev side were, pretty early on. So the fact that you can kind of take what you've been doing and share it with the rest of our community who's still, figuring out this space, I think is super valuable. So thank you guys again, and we'll have you back again soon.
Of course. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Right.
David, take care.
Sure. All right, we're going to keep things rolling. We have another amazing speaker. We have this time, I believe it's Sarah Brewer from Ford joining us today. So let's welcome